Welcome to Watershed Chats, a solution-centric mini-series of the Water People podcast. Here, we connect with folks who are transforming social and environmental challenges through their work and play for a healthy and habitable future on planet Ocean. This episode is supported by Patagonia, whose purpose-driven mission is to use business to save our home planet. My name is Lauren Hill, my co-host is Dave Rastovich, and today we're in conversation with Rhonda HARPER, U.S. Coast Guard veteran and founder of the NGO Black Girls Surf, which creates access opportunities for Black and brown women and girls to experience surfing. They are fostering a new generation of recreational and professional surfers. Parallel to the Black Girls Surf training camps, Rhonda HARPER is working to develop professional surfing in Africa by dreaming up an African Triple Crown, a series of professional surfing events to highlight indigenous African surfers. Her mission is to continue changing the visuals of surfing and surf culture.
So I've been doing what I've been doing, taking kids out to the beach since 2005. And I don't think, I just do it because that's what I'm supposed to do. I mean, in my heart, that's what motivates me. When I get up in the morning, that's what I think about. This is just something I'm supposed to do. So I don't think...
How did you come to that understanding that this is what you're supposed to do?
When you can't stop talking about it. Case in point, I was stuck in Senegal, right? I was filming for Haji Sam in the WSL, her movie Emerge. And I didn't have a job. It was COVID. I got locked in a country. I don't speak the language. Almost no one except for Haji spoke English while I was there. Literally none. So I have to rebuild my life, right? I didn't wallow in what could have been, right? I excelled in what could be. Because I was already there for Haji Sam. She was the first female surfer. So I was already there for her. But why am I here now for me? How am I going to survive? And so now we opened a surf camp in Senegal. We have an actual brick and mortar building right on the beach in the Yoff. That's how you excel. That's how you change the map. We had like 5 girls coming into this thing, and now we're at up towards 40. So it's building us a community. But that was the time. That was the period where I knew, okay, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
How did you come to surfing personally?
Beach blanket bingo, how to stuff a wild bikini, muscle beach party, Annette Funicello, Gidget, all of those things, all of those people. But one of the movies that I did see had Stevie Wonder in it. There wasn't, if you watch this movie, there's no black people. I even go back now and I'm looking for black people in that scene because it's Malibu, right? It's supposed to be California. We all love each other and all that stuff. And so I was looking, I was a 7-year-old kid, and the only person that I attached myself to was Stevie Wonder because little Stevie Wonder debuted in Muscle Beach Party. So and Candy, those are the two. Okay, so I was a dancer, so it was Candy. If you ever watch those movies and you see that girl that's always shaking it, she's getting that thing, she's doing that thing, that's Candy. And I was a dancer I started out ballet and tap at that age. And so her dancing and Stevie Wonder in the same movie, like that, that's it. That's how I got. That's how I got started. And then listen to the old guys because I've met most of the guys who were the character references for the movies. I met each one of them. And they're like, we hated it when it came out. I mean, we just thought it was garbage. Like, I'm like, you realize I wouldn't be here? But it's like. They thought it was corny, but when you live in Kansas City, you live in Kansas City, Kansas in the 1970s, and it's hot and there's nothing else to do. That's what you focused on. Like you got ready, like you literally got dressed. Like my brothers and sisters and I, we would go upstairs and get dressed, have our bowl of popcorn, and we would sit down because we knew like all the summer beach party movies were going to. I mean, it was like a whole big old routine. There were 6 of us. We didn't have anything to do, so that's what we did all summer long.
So how did you get from watching Beach Blanket Bingo to actually riding waves? Like, how'd you go from Kansas City to an ocean, first of all?
So my parents both work for the government. My mom was working for EEOC, and my dad was working for the unemployment office, transitioning vets from the war into society, right? And so my mom had the opportunity to be transferred to another state or city or whatever. And she decided that she wanted to go to California. And there's only two places you could go. One was San Jose, California, which was, at that time, it was like semi-rural, half city, half country. And then it was Los Angeles, where the Beverly Hillbillies lived, because that was the other TV show that we watched, right? So when they said, these are the two choices you have, you either go live with the Beverly Hillbillies or you go to San Jose, California, which one you want to go to? San Jose, California was the most like Kansas City, and so that's what they picked. And if you know San Jose, that area, then you know Santa Cruz is right over the hill. So yeah, 20 minutes to get to the beach.
What year was that when you moved, Rhonda?
1979.
And were there other people of color on the sand anywhere to be seen?
No. So when we moved from San Jose, we thought because it was California and everybody said it was diverse, we thought it was going to be different from Kansas City, and it actually was not. So my mom took us off to this beaten track because she didn't want to have to deal with, being vibed is what my parents call it, being vibed. So she would take us off to the side, to this beach on the side, and it was Lighthouse Beach. So I was actually, when I learned how to body surf for the first time and learned how to boogie board, was at Steamer's Lane, and I had no idea that was where it was. Like, I had no clue. Now I go back and I go, man, this is the best place to be. And so my mom took us down there. She couldn't swim. She couldn't surf. She hated the water, but she wanted her kids to experience whatever it is that they wanted to experience. And we used to go down there at Lighthouse Beach like 3 times a week, and I would just get beat down. We thought it was cute. You go down there and you get beat down by waves. You don't know. And then when now that I'm older and I walk down, I go, oh, that's Steamers. And I'm looking at those waves that we used to think were cute and we were bobbling in. I'm a much wiser adult not to do that. You know what I'm saying? But that's Santa Cruz. It was that first splash. I was hooked by then. And then after that, my parents were taking us to Hawaii. Like, I felt like we were in Hawaii like every other weekend because we could go, right? My dad was retired military. So we could go to the Air Force base and we could fly out for like $5. I ended up moving there. And this is how we get to the surfing part. I ended up moving there because even though we were in San Jose, there was that same kind of racial thing going on at school. My parents knew I was going to end up in jail, so they sent me off to be with my sister in Hawaii. And that's how I get to Hawaii, finally, to live and go to school. But I get sent to Hawaii, and while I'm there, the Magnum PI crew was there. And one of the guys there taught me how to surf for the first time. I actually was on the board for the first time with one of the crew members. I've been trying to find him for the last 20 years. I just want to let him know. I just want to say thank you. Like thank you for that first experience. Because that first experience would lead me to be who I am now.
Yeah, I find it really interesting to wrap my head around people's current surfing life and surfing sort of personalities when you start to piece together their experience of surfing throughout their life and the key people that have influenced how surfing fits into a healthy life or a better life somehow through the surfing experience. And so just hearing what you're saying then, that you had the experience of that Santa Cruz sort of surf town atmosphere, and then you have this character in Hawaii that you haven't been able to find but who was gracious enough to share with you and tow you into the experience and help you out there. And it just makes me curious about the work you do now when you have that experience with people where you see the light turn on in them when they harmonize with a wave, and they don't have to do anything fancy. You don't even have to stand up. It's just that moment. But when you see that light turn on in someone's eyes, how magic that is for us who have been surfing for so long and have caught, so many waves. Can you speak to that? Is that something that you still feel now? You got 40 people there that you work with in Senegal. do you still see that and just get lit up as well?
Yeah. I mean, I'm grinning now. You know what I mean? Like you know that feeling. You see it. You can feel it when they feel it. You can feel it.
It's
usually
contagious.
I'm in the water with them. It's a contagious feeling, and it not only contagious, it's addictive, because then you want to see more kids do the same thing. You want them to understand. When I went to Hawaii, I was an angry kid. I know what surfing did for me. I know how I came home. I know who I was before I went, and I know who I was when I came home. I was two different people altogether, and the change all came from the ocean and respect and being out with nature. So when I see those girls light up, and I see them light up every day, all day. If there's one of our girls who, no matter what, she just has the biggest grin on her face all the time. I mean, she could wipe out, and she's wiping out, I'm sure, with her mouth open because she's smiling. Like, I love taking pictures of her because she is like, there's two of them, but this one particular one is like pure joy of riding waves. And it's amazing. Those are the girls in Senegal. And I mean, those girls came from not having anyone to guide them, right? And with no hope. Like, no one was thinking about having these girls, change their lives into these surf girls. Haji Sam did. She called, she was in California, and she was like, Rhonda, can we start this thing in Senegal? And I said, of course. I mean, she saw it. So when we're actually out with the girls, still to this day, that was like 2 years ago, I think. 2.5 years ago. These girls are still stoked, like, just like this, the very first day. So I can't wait. We're here in South Africa right now, and on the 18th of April, I have another 43 girls coming from a township here called Crossroads, and we're going to do a girls' day out. I usually do one a year. There's a Mother's Day out that comes out on Mother's Day, and then there's the girls' day out, and that's going to happen on the 18th here. But I'm so excited. Like, they sent me a message, and I'm telling you, I get messages from all over the world. This was the cutest message I've ever, because they asked all of the girls. Apparently, I didn't hear the question. I just heard the answer on the recording. And I'm going to assume that the question was, do you want to go and have a surf day? And they responded with yes. And you can hear all 43 girls in the background. Yes, we're going to do that. It's absolutely you're in your career, in your whole career. And I hope everyone has these moments. This is not a job for me. I hope everybody has these times in their life where they can change, or they have the opportunity to help change somebody's life. Because once you do that, once that light is turned on those girls, like you were saying before, it doesn't go off. That flame is lit. And for us to be here and do these days out, this isn't the last day out. I have to leave here in May and then go to California. I have to go back home. I've been in Africa for like 2 years. I'm like, I'm never going home. But I have to go home finally and open the Los Angeles camp and get that officially up and running. But I'm going to see that stoke again.
A major part of your work has been specifically training Black girls and Black women to be competitive surfers. And I'm really interested in why you chose competition surfing in particular. I mean, it's definitely, well, it hasn't been historically the most lucrative professional sport to be involved in. And there's so many barriers in terms of, race and gender and socioeconomic status. And that's the case with other sports too. But I was just really curious about what drove you to want to expand the definition of pro surfer.
I was tired. I was a journalist for a while. Just by happenstance, I just happened to end up writing on surfing, and Black surfing in particular, because I was with an agency called Black Athlete Sports Network. And when they send you out on an assignment, first of all, they ask, this is the most off-the-wall question I've ever been asked, is, do you want to write? Because we've never heard of Black surfers, and it was a Black sports network, right? And so I said, of course, because no one was doing it at the time. And after a while of being sent on assignments, I even was sent to Hawaii to do the Triple Crown. I was sent to U.S. Open to report on that. And you go and you sit in these press boxes for hours and you don't see anybody that looks like you. You don't even see a representative of something that could possibly be you. And then at some point, right, you want to have further information, because what I wanted to do was not just report, oh, so-and-so's on a wave and blah, 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 and just be, people, oh, she's not really a writer. She doesn't really know what she's talking about. So what I did was I took the ISA judging and officiating course so that I would understand point totals. So now I know what I'm looking at. It's not just me just out there just writing and not knowing what I'm talking about. It's actually me understanding how contests go. And after doing that for so long, I was just like, you have to put the laptop down and get in the front and start working on seeing people so that you can write on them. See, at the time I was like, okay, see people so you can write on them. When I said that, I really didn't have a clue as to how serious this situation was. Like, I'm looking at Australia, no blacks. Looking at Africa, no blacks. You looking at Africa, no blacks. Wait a minute, what happened? Okay, California, no blacks. I mean, everywhere you go, Hawaii, no blacks. What's going on? Okay, now you have to do something. Now you learned how to run a contest because you've taken that course. Let's do something. Let's out of the box. Let's just throw a contest with just African surfers so that sponsors, this is the intent, so that sponsors could see that there was talent there. So trying to find that talent was easy on the men's side. Trying to find that talent on the women's side. We had equal already, so we knew we could get men from all over the world because it was a Pan-Afro contest that was being held in Sierra Leone in 2014. So we knew we had enough men. There were 12 boys that were just in Freetown, so, we knew there was more people out there. And we started looking at the associations and nobody had any girls. And the associations are the ones that are linked to the Olympics. So how do you get to the Olympics? How do you progress if there's no pathway for progression? And these kids don't know that there actually is a way that they can compete. They just don't know how. And KK in Sierra Leone wanted to compete, and she was the first and only girl. Now, I'm not going to tell the first and only girl that we're not going to find somebody for her to compete against. That's just, it just doesn't sound right. And also, my counterpart was the national women's champion of Jamaica. And so we couldn't have her surf against KK because the playing field is not even. Like, we wanted to find girls that were up and coming that we could put in this contest with her so we could showcase that Africa talent is rising. Well, we couldn't find any. And so then we went outside of the association and started looking at the surf camps, and that's how we found Haji Sam. We found her at a surf camp in Senegal, and instantaneously, I was like, who is this girl? But she's holding a board. She wasn't surfing. I didn't see a wave. I hadn't seen a wave, nothing. I said, who is this girl? She's holding a board. Okay, so I contact the camp, and I say, who is this girl? And they're like, oh, that's Audrey Song. She's an instructor here. Oh, she's an instructor. So she's an instructor. She has to know surfing, right? So I said, can you give me her contact information? They said yes. So I contact her, and the first question I asked her, I said, do you want to compete in surfing? And she said, yes. I said, do you want to go pro? And she said, yes. Okay. When you asked the question, why did I choose competitive surfing? We were missing in that arena, right? And at that time, we weren't self-identifying ourselves the way we were now. 2008, I saw Sula and Narisa, North Shore, Hawaii, Ali'i Beach during the Triple Crown, right? We weren't identifying ourselves as Afro-Latina, Afro this, Afro that, Afro. At that time, I saw her on the beach. I took a picture of her. I said, she could be black, but I'm not going to walk up to her because I felt like that was, inappropriate. And so I just let it go. And then a few years ago, while I was building Black Girl Surf IG, and I'm looking for surfers, and I see this girl that looks like the girl that I took a picture of. So I say to her, is this you? I just sent her the picture, and I said, is this you? And she said, yeah, that's me. I said, I was there at that contest in 2008. And I took this picture, but I didn't know that you were Black. And then find out that Wiggly Donis, Wesley Donis, the whole entire family surfs, like the Narisa and Dantas. Those are names that we know because Wiggly was on the world tour for a minute. Nobody was labeling them as Black or Afro-Latin. They were just Brazilians. That's what they were calling them. And so you miss that count. You can't count when they don't count you, right? So there was Sule and Narisa down there. There was Erica Prada, who was literally working with the ASP at the time. And she was an announcer and commentator in Brazil. And then there was Noala Cuesta, who was down there. And she was the very first Black female to surf. But until you put together an IG or something like that, you don't know. If I would have had IG in 2014, that contest would have went a whole different way, and we might not have even had a Black girl surf right now. But because we only had KK and then we had Haju, I was like, let's bring them to California to train. And then, because in 2014, Ebola, this is my second pandemic, Ebola shut us down the first time. And then, actually the third pandemic, because Donald Trump was was elected in 2016. So he was definitely a pandemic because he put in the Muslim ban and all the travel bans. So then we had to close that down, and all the ambassadors were all fired. So we, in order to get visas, you need ambassadors. You need people working in the embassies. You couldn't do it in that. So 2016, these are years that are just going by. And I say, okay, that's it. Bring them to California to train. We heard that the Olympics could possibly be a thing, and we didn't know. And then we were able to get Haju out, and we were still to this day. Black Girl Surf, there would not be one without KK. Still to this day, we have not been able to get KK out of Sierra Leone because of immigration. So I have not met this young girl that I met when she was 14 and been taken care of, putting through school. I've not been able to meet her yet because of immigration and pandemics. Those are the two things that have kept us apart. So, so now we find out that the Olympics are coming. We get Haju to California. We find out, it is an Olympic thing. We put out the SOS is what you saw was our financing. And, the rest is history. I mean, from that very moment where I called ABC, specific reporter, because he had already done a story on, I was in construction, so he had already done a construction story on me. So I was able to just call him up and say, listen, I have a West African surfer who needs money to go to the Olympics. Can you help? And with like 45 minutes, he was like, where are you? I said, I'm in Santa Cruz at Steamers Lane. He was there. So after that, Black Girl Surf just took off, and it is what it is today because of the help of people who saw the vision, could see further than most people in the surf industry. And we did not. This is why we have worldwide popularity instead of surf community popularity. I never went to the surf media at all because I knew what the challenge was. I knew there was a racism problem. I knew there was a female problem. I already knew all the problems and all the obstacles. I was working in the industry, so I already knew. I'm going to the contest. I can see there's no Black people. You already know. Don't go to that. So I went to mainstream media, BBC, ABC, anybody that was listening, I was calling. At one point, I made the first call to ABC, and I never had to call anybody after that. Because once that story hit, it was over. And we've been telling this story for now 2 years. But what I want people to see is not the story that's behind us, but the future that we built since then. We've been able to work with the WSL to do a bunch of wonderful things. Not just the WSL, with brands as well, and trying to get them to understand that unless you diversify, you're going to become irrelevant in this industry. Everybody's already broke. I watched Billabong stock go from, I think it was at $11 at one point, all the way down to like 25 cents, and then they stopped selling shares. If you don't know your industry, then you won't know how to navigate it. You already knew. You can't go to Billabong and ask them for sponsorship because they're going through some things. If they stop selling shares, that means they're losing business. So don't go to Billabong. Don't go to Billabong.
Yeah, I mean, we're both in the camp where we feel like we're really interested in surf culture. We understand, as you do, that the surf industry is steeped in all of these deep biases and old ways of doing business and understanding the world. And so, yeah, surf culture and diversification and taking the power back, as you've done, in changing the definition of what it means, what it looks like to be a surfer. That's the future of surfing.
Yeah, that's the future, and but if you're going to be in this, and competition is a little bit different than recreational surfing. Well, it's a lot different because we have different ways of living, right? Ours is mostly built on the physical and the fitness, nutrition aspect. When you're looking at surfing competitively, when you're looking at recreational surfing, most recreational surfers, they're like, I had a bad day at work. I need to go excel, and I just need to do this. And on ours, we're so high performance, like we hardly ever come down, which is why we added the surf therapy program in there, so that you know, your coaches have you at a certain level. You're here. And then if you add surf therapy in there, you can kind of level this out. So you have the perfect surfer, whether, you know, you're balancing your fitness, your training, and then who you are going to be in the world of surfing. It's different. Like Haju, she has to worry about who she is. A lot of surfers don't have to worry about that. She has to worry about what she does in the world of surfing, because now she's like the first to come in and do this kind of thing that we're doing now. So she has to be aware of herself, now self-confidence and pride, knowing that she's changing the face, the visuals, literally changing the visuals. Because now you see all of these subsequent camps that are coming out, and we're looking at that like, we don't look at that as competition. We look at that as a great thing, because that's what the whole point was. Like it would be, you know, the whole point was to build on this, not to just hold on to the treasure trove of Black surfing, but to expand it worldwide. And I think that's why the international component of us has worked so well. It's because we didn't say, oh, this is just a U.S. company. We went out to different countries.
I think that's really crucial, because the California surf, and actually specifically the Southern California, Irvine, radically industrialized branch of the surfing tree there, has been the loudest aspect of the surfing industry for decades now, and have been so dominant in the stories that they just keep rehashing over and over and again. And it's so fucking boring. Like it drove us crazy. And that's why we are doing what we do with this, and lots of other people are doing what they're doing to broaden and diversify the storytelling in surfing. And that's something that I was curious about too, is that how do you feel then now, especially because you've been in Africa for the last 2 years, getting away from California and us here in, say, Australia and New Zealand? I'm originally from New Zealand, so I think the surf culture there is relatively similar to Australia in some ways, where for quite a few years the sheen and the gloss and the sparkle of American media, especially coming from the surf companies that had so much money there for so long, it's kind of lost that now. That sparkle that was wowing so many people is kind of gone. And I think that's actually a really good thing, because it's opening up so many more windows and opportunities and areas of conversation that were previously just dominated by hyper-competitive, hyper-commercialized and sexist and racist perspectives. And so I was thinking before, when you said, oh, you're going to be going back to California, I'm wondering how that's going to be for you, considering that there's no Surfer magazine anymore. The industry's sort of just vaporizing. The WSL's trying its best to stay relevant and keep alive and keep pumping through this difficult time. But it is a radically different place that you're going back to compared to 2 years ago when you left.
It is. And this is what I said about knowing the industry and mentioning those companies, because what happens is because you didn't diversify it, because you let it get stale. They let it get stale. They
100%.
I can tell you the last surfer magazine that I bought was Andy Irons was on the front cover. It was literally right before he passed away. I was done. I was out of the surf media, and that's why we didn't go to the surf media. When I went to Hawaii, my parents bought me a hope chest. All girls get a hope chest, right? They're hoping that you're going to do something wonderful in your world. So they give you some sheets and some dishes and all this. And then I didn't take any of that stuff. I took all that stuff and set it on my bed, and I put all surf magazines in my trunk with some journals and some pins, some art pins, because I was an artist, right? I don't have that feeling for surf magazines anymore. I don't have any feeling for surf media anymore. And I say this a lot, so it's not offensive to them. They've already heard it. They have, even writing Black stories now, even after the paddle out, and they only had a couple of more days. Their time was ticking, and they were desperate when they started writing about the paddle outs, because they left us out of the paddle outs, and we were the ones that started the paddle outs. So we knew that there was a bias already, because we were telling the truth. Black Girl Surf was telling the truth. We were telling the truth. We've been telling the truth since.
Are you talking about the paddle outs for solidarity?
Yeah, that was Black Girl Surf. So when that happened, we were left out, right? We had been left out. We've been left out of those magazines for one reason, and one reason only, is that we tell the truth. They tell you you're racist. They tell you you've been racist. If you can count the numbers of how many magazines that you had a Black person on the cover, and it just ends up being Buttons. I mean, Buttons was, his height was in the 70s and the 80s. Okay, then we're in 2021, and you haven't diversified the covers at all. It's still said, how do you expect to sell another magazine? Even if it was the day that Surfer Magazine went down, I went on their site and I said, thank God. Because it ends that hold that they had on the surf industry, where the imagery had to be coming from them. Now you see Hurley start putting out people of color. Now you see Billabong start putting out people of color. This didn't happen. Go back last year and see. Go on one of their sites and look and tell me how many African Americans they had, or how many Mexicans, or how many Hawaiians. I mean, literally, they had cut, even the surf industry even cut Hawaiians out of their own contest. It had to evolve, because it had imploded. So the WSL struggling now is a blessing, because now they see what I was talking about diversifying. If you don't diversify, where's your customer coming from? Where's your customer base from? And anybody paying attention to the customer base? So that's when I started looking at the stocks and understanding how all of these things play into this business. And then adding in the fact that it's a fashion industry, right? All the surfers are product placement. They're nothing but models in the water. That's the only difference. If there was France, they'd be running the walkway. This is it. They put you in a bathing suit and all this stuff. And all of these things needed to change in order to be able to make $5. I said I had to create a whole category. Imagine you have menswear, women's wear. You have white women. You have Spanish, Mexican, Latina women. You have all these people, and then you don't have Black women. I had to create an entire category by putting out Black Girl Surf, by doing the footwork on the ground for the companies to even shine a light on a Black female surfer. There's a lot of work that went into that process. So when you talk about culture, you have to look at what makes a culture, because it's not the surfers that are on the street. It's definitely not them. It's right there in the office. They create that culture. And until you go into that office and you say, look, that culture's gone, you're going to have to recreate it, we're going to have to do something else, it won't change. I went to the companies and said, it's time for a change. Sit down with them. I don't know anybody else. And everybody's like, Rhonda, I don't know anybody else who actually went in and started talking to companies. I talk to companies all the time about diversifying and what it means to your bottom line, because that is what they're there for, right? They're there for their bottom line. We're here for the freedom and be able to compete and have a platform where we can shine too, and we're not excluded from the process. But unless you go and talk to the man who's running the process and he doesn't understand, I've changed so many people's minds just by going in and talking to them. And they had some bias they didn't even realize. Well, I just thought black people, and I heard it before, I just thought black people didn't like water and, they don't swim and blah, blah, blah. I heard this and I heard that. Well, that'll keep you excluded from a sport because you have people who are still spreading myths.
Well, that does speak to the fact that there have been very real, very racially based barriers for people of color to have access to beaches, to pools, to the opportunity to learn how to swim, not to mention to surfboards and wetsuits. And how do you navigate that conversation around the historic lack of Black surfers and surfers of color?
Just by telling the truth. Just by telling you that your fees are too high and giving you an example of how they're too high. And there's an example I normally give. If I was a West African girl and I wanted to join WSL and I knew how to go about it, the first thing I have to do is pay $150 for a membership fee, right? So if my parents make $720 US a year, what are the chances that my parents, even if as talented as Haju is, what are the chances that my parents are going to save $150 US just for the membership? That's not even the entry fee. That's just how that, and then I have to travel, right? Thank God Haju had us because we paid for every single thing for the last 4 years for Haju, right? Or she would not be where she is right now. Every single thing we paid for. She needs something, we're going to send it to her. They don't have the money. So how I go about this conversation is just to give that example of just this one surfer. Now, this surfer just happened to change the world, but she had financial backing behind it. Now, imagine if all the little West African kids had it or all the South African kids had it, because there's some serious talent in Africa. There's so much talent in Africa, it's almost overwhelming. But they will never get to the point. Having these conversations with the powers that be, right? Whether it's the WSL or it's Hurley or whoever it may be. WSL, I sat down with them 2 years ago and told them exactly what the problem was. First of all, the fees were too high. Second of all, the travel and location and people trying to, if you cancel every contest in Africa, how's that African going to continue on into the QS? There's no way. There's no possible way, right? Because they've just cut it off. And especially now we're all regional. So each region is now going to hold a series, all these series of contests, right? And those are going to get you to the Challenger Series. And that Challenger Series may get you on the CT. But if you are in the QS, everybody knows that if you're in the QS, you're working 20 times harder than the ones on the CT just to get the point totals. How can you afford that? Okay, well, let's start breaking down the fees. Let's start adding in scholarships. Let's start, going to the communities and asking the sponsors, listen, hey, we have 10 surfers. Can you sponsor them wetsuits? This is an on-the-ground boot theory that has been working for me for the last 2 years.
It's so fantastic to hear about where you're helping to lead African surf culture, because how radically has the history of African surf culture been left out of the dominant narrative of surfing, especially considering that some of the earliest reports, some of the earliest accounts of witnessed surfing, they did happen to be by white European people, but were of surfers in Ghana. And of course, like kids who grow up on coastlines anywhere with breaking waves. Of course there are surfers. Of course there have been established surf cultures since time immemorial, because it's an efficient thing to do to learn how to ride a wave, but it's also just crazy, ecstatically fun. And that's universal.
Oh, of course. And Haju is from Ngor, where they filmed Endless Summer. And for those guys, it's amazing to watch it now, because those were the movies that influenced us as kids. But then when you go and you really go into the community and you start talking to people. People have been surfing there. They tried to make it look like, oh, we're in Angora. This is the first time this has ever been surfed and blah, 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 and this thing. And everybody in the village is like, no, they didn't call it surfing. They didn't call surfboards surfboards. Everybody used something else. I was staying in Angora for a year, and I was living in an apartment right on the top, and underneath, literally 10 feet from the building, the kids were teaching each other how to surf. And the youngest was like a 5-year-old teaching a 1-year-old how to surf on a board, on a wave, in the little lagoon that they had in front of their house. Haju trains at that Angora Right, which is a world-class wave that was shown in Endless Summer. That hotel was in one of my windows. The hotel where they stayed is in one window, and where she trains and where our girls train, the young girls train, is the Angora Right. That's a world-class wave. So you can't say that they came and they were first. This is so crazy. It was like, you gotta be kidding me.
This is a constant story in surfing, in a version of modern surfing history. And there's an amazing book called Waves of Resistance by a Hawaiian professor, Isaiah Helikanuhi Walker. And he tells the exact same story about the North Shore of Oahu, and when all the big guns, the top shot Californian white fellas, were coming to the North Shore and conquering these empty, wild waves. No, there was a handful of amazing, strong local Hawaiian surfers surfing those breaks at Sunset Beach and all the other amazing spots there, who were just excluded from those very early surf films that were building Californian surf culture that would spread around the world. But that was exactly the same kind of example where they were just edited out of the storytelling, and that has happened all over the world. And so what that makes me think of is, okay, if that's the track record of the industry and these main storytellers in the industry,
white colonialism,
and that then led towards the establishment of this tour. And the tour also has a terrible track record on the North Shore and in Hawaii of treating local Hawaiian people. Yeah. And so for me, because I turned my back on that world as a teenager, and I was deeply embedded in it, and I feel as though the opportunity for kids to have a surf contest experience is a great thing. It should be available for everyone, though. When I've spent time with so many amazing, talented surfers over the years, and I love asking this question, what was it that would get you to the surf contest all the time when you were a kid? It was hanging out with their buddies at the beach all day. It was never the sole reason of being a winner and being on the podium for that one day until the next event, the next weekend or whatever. It was to be there with other people and to have that feeling of camaraderie and togetherness, and to be getting pounded in a lineup and look across in the whitewater and see your buddy right there getting pounded too, and you're laughing as you go onto the whitewater, and sharing all of that together is really key. And something that's been happening in Australia in recent history is that we have these very, very sporty, serious, high-performance centres that have popped up. And it's something that's been very much complicating the surfing experience for kids with hyper-competitiveness. And I've met a bunch of kids who have lost their love of surfing through it being complicated with competition. So something I was interested to just hear what your perspective with this is, that it's such a small percentage of people who go through the surfing competition world and get to a point where they can feed themselves and their families and look after some of their kin through financial success in competitive surfing. And what happens for all the others who perhaps go through the experience of contests and maybe come out the other end feeling like surfing's been a little more complicated than it could have been, that I guess that surf therapy thing that you were talking about before, that aspect of it is addressing that. But I was just curious what your experience has been so far with young women coming in and learning the surfing experience and doing competitions, and how like really fired up people are to be winners or are they just really loving their being there with others and feeling a sense of community in that space?
I think if I use Senegal, I mean, we have different camps. Maria Eduardo is in Brazil. She's been competing, I don't know, and you would think that this girl has been surfing for 20 years, and she's 12 years old. So she has a different mentality about it. She really does want to compete. And what we're doing here is, this is a competition camp, number one. On the second side of that, we have the what used to be called the Nappy Roots camp is now the Black Girl Surf Minis, because the minis felt left out of the Black Girl Surf label. So now they just want to be minis. And so we're like, okay, so they're Black Girl Surf Minis, but we have the minis. And so if you don't want to continue on your journey of competition, but you still want to be, you still want to surf and you still want to hang out with your friends, we have that component too. When we're talking about the competition aspect of that, we're looking at it from all the angles, right? We're trying to bring the fun back into competition. So this is what we did with the competition that we're having right now with the girls. There's so many things that are layered in that. You go to the competition, you check in, you get your jersey and you're off in your heat. And so there's other things that we're putting together, even for the parents, that they can come out and have. So it's going to become an experience, right? So what we're trying to do is, and I said this repeatedly, even to the WSL, is that this particular Black Girl Surf and the ASI in totality is about bringing that fun back, where you don't feel like that pressure is on you from the competition rounds like it used to be. And I think the WSL is even kind of trying to relax that too, right? I know that people are bringing in psychologists to deal with any angst or any anxieties that we used to go through. I mean, we didn't, like a whole bunch of this stuff we didn't have. Like when I was skateboarding, nobody had a skateboard psychologist you could go to. It's like I felt like I couldn't skate today. And that's what, nobody had that.
I really need to talk about that.
I need to discuss this, but there is, and I'm going to tell you why it's important, especially with these girls. These girls come from backgrounds who are already anxiety induced, right? They come from very small villages. They're going to be judged on their race and how they look and their body types and all this stuff. So we try to prepare them and make this fun for them. So I know I have a very serious surfer who's going to go on to the Olympics. I already know that for a fact. Haji will go on to the Olympics. We know that for a fact. But any of the girls that don't want to go in, so this is what we do. We have days where you can learn how to run the camera, where you can learn how to just run the social media. And so you give them choices, but they still want to be around surfing. They still want to surf. But now there's other jobs that we need to do. Partnering with Decathlon and having an internship where they run part of Decathlon and they're still here with Black Girl Surf. But then, once they get old enough, or they've trained long enough, then they go on to be able to have jobs in management throughout the companies, like keeping them within the surf industry, but really dialing in on what the actual need is a surfer. Before, people were just like, you just go surf. Why are you standing here? Like, go surf. Like your heat is on. And that's all they cared about. But that's not what we care about. We care about what happens after, right? That's why we educate you. We pay for your education because we know how surfing is. And competitive surfing, it's a very, very short-lived career, if you have one at all. But if you don't have schooling, then you go back to your country and you're relegated back to chores or being married off early and this thing and that thing, And so we're trying to put in different categories within the surf industry that you're not stuck in one. You can be any of these things. Look, I wanted to be a pro surfer. Now I just help pro surfers. It was my dream to be one. I missed that boat. Now you just help everybody else. You know what I'm saying? What do they say? There's a saying, those that can't do, coach.
Oh, it's so fantastic to hear you say all of that, Rhonda, and that you're living it. It's just great that you're enacting all these deep feelings and deep thought. It's obvious that you've really, really considered what it is that you're working on and all of the ripples that come out from doing such things, such radical things too. And it's just really encouraging, because I know for myself that being embedded in the surf industry for quite a while, I really have struggled for quite a long time to find anything that positive and that healthy about it at all.
And I had to come back with that attitude. I couldn't have the attitude that I already knew what the surf industry was before I just took a dive. I had to do a bunch of research to prepare myself even mentally for what I was going to be involved in. I knew there was going to be a lot of sexism, a lot of racism. One of the things that I wanted to do, and this is really weird, but it worked. One of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to dress down when I had these meetings, or I was on the beach or whatever. You don't see me in bikinis and all this other stuff as the distraction, right? Then they start focusing on you and who you are. I wanted to focus on the knowledge so that when I walk into your office, I can talk to you sensibly, and you look at me like, where did she get all this information? Well, it was there. And the information was there. I just researched it, made sure that I mastered what I was saying, and really having a goal set in which we were able to do. I just want to say that when your dream is realized and you go, oh my God, that really happened. So I'm at that particular point, but
specifically, do you feel like you're at that point specifically with Africa Surf International? Was that your dream that you are bringing to fruition right now?
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what it was. Black Girl Surf was a detour. We didn't have black girls, so we had to detour off to get black girls for Africa Surf International. So when the WSL asked, because we were trying to hold a contest in Senegal, which is super difficult. I was asked by the WSL if I would pick up Africa Surf International. They asked Black Girl Surf if Black Girl Surf would hold the contest, and it's a nonprofit that's it. It's within the Africa Surf International umbrella. So it's just one of our programs that's in the Africa Surf family. But when they asked, I said, of course. And then they came back about 10 minutes later and they said, well, can you use Africa Surf International for these contests? And I said, of course. That was the whole point. This is when you come full circle. Of course. So yeah, this is when you work hard, and this is what I said, and this is why I'm surfing now. As I promised myself I would not get in the water while there was this racial divide, while this was this socioeconomic. I personally, in my mind, boycotted. I didn't have to say it out loud. I didn't want to get in the water. I didn't want to surf. I wanted to work until I felt I was done. And then I can surf for the rest of my life. Till now, until the day I die, to surf. But if I took time off to worry about everything that happens in the lineup or in the community itself, we wouldn't be here right now. None of us would be here. If I was just a regular surfer and I was just surfing for recreation and not anything else, we wouldn't be here right now because there was nobody picking this up. There was no one.
I was reading an article last year about just to change direction a little bit, but I'll bring it back to you. I'll get there.
Okay.
Ghana's Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture started extending invitations to African Americans, asking them to resettle in Ghana, and especially if they feel unwelcome in the U.S. And the Minister of Tourism, Arts and Culture basically was saying, we welcome you with open arms, come back to your homelands. Africa's waiting for you. And I was just wondering, as an African-American woman growing up in Kansas City, if you had a sense or connection with African culture and if that called you throughout your life or if that was something that you came to as an adult.
No, it had been calling me since the day I saw Roots for the first time in the 70s, right? So I always wanted to, and my father was stationed with Alex Haley, who wrote that book, and they both went through the Coast Guard with a whole bunch of racial things that they had to go through. Alex Haley will eventually leave the Coast Guard because it's racist, but it has always been in my DNA to go back. I didn't know when. I kept saying, if you talk to people like Kwesi Kika and people that are on the tours and whatnot, they're like, Rhonda's been coming to Africa for at least since 2007. So I started this whole thing. It started out as a camp for the amputees in Sierra Leone. I was really inundated in the culture of Sierra Leone before I even got stuck into Senegal. But once I got to Senegal, and I did read that article about Ghana, but I was already a resident. I felt bad because I was already a resident of Senegal when I saw that about Ghana, and I was like, dang. You didn't have to go through all of the things that you have to go through over there. But they were just like, come on. We were like, hey. But Ghana sounded really good, but I was in Senegal.
Oh, wow. And so you are heading to LA to set up camp there, and in the back of your mind, do you feel like you'll be there, you'll get that job done, and then you'll go back to Africa? I already am done with that camp. Like, in my mind, I've already opened it, and I'm on plane on my way back to South Africa. I mean, I have a fiance, and even the advice there was like, you no longer belong here. Your spirit does not belong here anymore. It literally has left the building, because this morning when I got up, I got dressed, blah, blah, blah. Colin came over, blah, blah, blah. We did that. Okay, if I'm in the United States, I'm getting dressed. I'm wearing a hoodie right now. I'm not wearing a hoodie. I'm not wearing this hat. I got my hair wrapped up and probably have some stuff on, some makeup and all this stuff, just so they don't mistake me for a black male. I'm not in the mood for that. When I get up in the morning, I just look terrible. When I answer the door, I just look terrible. Yeah, I don't care. It's what it is. You know what I'm saying? I don't have to dress up to not get hit in the head. This is what I used to tell my friends. I used to do crazy stuff in the car all the time. I go, you guys should remember I'm black, right? So you guys can't like drink and be doing crazy stuff in the car while I'm here, because I'll be the first one to get knocked in the head. They're going to ask y'all questions afterwards, but I'll be the first one to go down. No, I'm not in the mood. I don't have that problem here in Africa. I can take an Uber, no problem. They're not like not picking me up because I'm in a certain section of town. You know, I'll walk the streets without having to feel some type of unsafety, you know? And this is what I want for my girls, not only just in the United States, because this is that racism thing, it goes on to different continents. So we're not just in San Jose. I mean, we're not just in California and South Africa and Senegal. We're in Jamaica. So we have to worry about what the social climate is there. We have to worry about the social climate in Brazil, which is horrible, and the COVID numbers are up. But we're just always constantly worrying about where this is going. And somebody is sitting at, me, is sitting on a computer trying to figure out what's going on in each country to make sure that our athletes stay safe, right? Here in South Africa, we have that gender-based violence, right? Or in Senegal, we have the patriarchal system that doesn't allow women to do certain things, and you're regulated to these kind of things, and they don't want to see you do those things. So everywhere we go, we're always conscious of the culture, the social climate that's going on. And, United States was probably the worst one. Like the worst one, the only one I don't want to deal with is the United States. I mean, it's on my own country. Like I can talk to the Minister of Sports here in Sierra Leone and build within these structures. But when it comes to the United States, their system of equity is unmatched by far, and no one has that. But no one will know that until they come out of the country. Watching the news in the United States is the most depressing thing I've ever seen in my life. Like watching the things that go on and some of the, just like the pettiness, and just when you look at that and you're like, you're an adult now. And you think, this is how, if you're talking about your identity brand, this is the brand, because the United States has a great marketing team. Like whoever said that they were first, America first and all that, they have super marketing team. Like I want that marketing team, but it's nothing of what they say it is. It's absolutely like smoke and mirrors every day you walk down the street. I hope they get better with that illness that they have. But until, this is why we're here for the next generation, right? Because the next generation coming out will be stronger. They'll be well equipped. They'll be educated. They'll understand what it is they're actually watching, and how, when they go from this country to this country, what's the difference? The Africans may never want to go to the United States. They went once and they see how they're treated, but they'll go to Brazil because they'll treat them better, right? So it's a learning experience for all of us. I know it was a learning experience for me because they kept telling me that my whole life
they tell black people, you don't want to go to Africa. Don't white people are always telling you go back to Africa. And black people are like, we ain't going back to Africa, because they scare you into not coming to Africa. They do. When you're a little kid, you don't want to go to Africa. They're starving over there. They come over here and it looks like San Jose, California on any given day. I can go to one of these, like Cock Bay looks exactly like Santa Cruz. Musenberg looks like Santa Monica, or one side of it. You know how Santa Monica goes into Venice. So this side of Musenberg looks like Santa Monica, and then that other side over there looks like Venice. But I mean, it looks like my home. And they have more people here that look like me in the water. That's the most surprising thing. That's the best part about being in Africa as opposed to being in the United States. I don't have to worry about being in the water here and somebody saying something to me. But if I'm in California, especially now, going through all of the stuff that I did with the paddle outs and all the stuff that I've said about racism and surfing and blah, 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 do I feel safe getting in the water anywhere in the United States? No. No, not at all. And that's just how it is. That's the difference. So, yeah, I'm coming right back. I'm going home, open that camp, and get all my people set up and make sure that it's running correctly. And then I'll kiss my dog and my fiance, and then I'll go.
Well, Rhonda, I've passed through Senegal quite a few years ago and hung out and made a bit of music with some local crew, and I wanted to ask you how you go dancing to the Sabah drumming there. Have you got any skills?
Oh my God.
Can you keep up with that radical music? You can.
I live in a village, so it's like almost every other day thing. So the girls finally dragged me out there, and they didn't think that I had been paying attention for the entire time I was there, and I was keeping up with them. And they were just like, "What?" But you'll see us if you've seen the Hulu spot. Yeah. You'll see us dancing. I was watching it every other day, and I was a dancer. So, I was looking, I was like, it looks intricate. Oh, this looks like, no, I got it. No worries.
All time. Great.
No, that's the best part. That's the best part of being there.
Yeah.
Is dancing with your girls and having that good time and knowing that they feel safe where you are. You know, every time we move somewhere, they were right there. In the morning, you wake up and there's 40 kids sitting on your lawn, and you're like, what the heck? What happened? Somebody said Black Girl Surf was over there, and you wake up and there's 40 kids waiting outside for you to just come outside. And or when you move again and you try to move all the way to the 5th floor, and you wake up and they're waiting there on the stairs when you open up the door. They're there waiting for you on the stairs. Those are the best parts of being in Senegal.
That's so great. That's wonderful.
I'm just curious about how we can support your work, how people who are listening can support your work in the most helpful way possible.
The most helpful way at this particular moment, especially when we're trying to move the girls here for the first WSL contest, is probably donations, whether it's in kind or monetarily, because we have a lot of airline fees that we have to cover. And we really do want all of our girls to participate in this particular one. So we have a GoFundMe that's been going on. I probably need to refresh it because it's been going on since Haju came for the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. But yeah, that's the best way, is GoFundMe at Black Girl Surf in the back. And then just more than anything, I think we need vocal support. It's very hard for these girls. When these girls were finally put onto the WSL platform for the first time, and you go look at the comments that are underneath them, and they're racist, and these are grown men, just racist and crazy. These girls need more moral support than any other girls. There's no other group of girls that are going to need support like these girls, especially with a name like Black Girl Surf, because as soon as you say Black Girl Surf, then you have, why isn't it White Girl Surf? Because it's not. When I named it, I wasn't thinking about white girls. I was just thinking about Black girls that look like me, who've been excluded from the surf industry for decades. That's what I was thinking of. But yeah, we're pleasantly moving into another season of this company, and I'm blessed that we're able to continue, because you know what, once there's so many groups that come out in one year, they're here, and the next year they're gone. And so here we are in our 4th year, up and running. And we just feel blessed because we knew that there was a need and we just didn't know how to fill that need. Now we have it. So yeah, the best way to do it is to donate to us because, you know, these girls need wetsuits. They need, you know, boards. That's one of the things when you're in West Africa, the hardest thing to get is a surfboard. There's nothing harder in West Africa to buy than a surfboard. You may find 6 for sale, maybe. And they've got the price so high because they know it's a rare thing to do. So that's the main thing that we need is equipment and gear at any given time.
Rhonda, so you're on the eve of this, bringing this incredible dream to fruition. You've called it the African Triple Crown, and also at the same time part of this cultural change where I was reading an interview that you did not long ago, and you basically said, I've never seen an African-American woman on anything surf-related print-wise, and now, not long ago, Nika Miller was on the cover of Surf Girl, which is a small publication, but it's still, I don't know, it meant something to me to see.
It meant to me too.
Yeah.
Surf Girl and See Together magazine. And you know, Surfer magazine and Surfer magazine Transworld, it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter to us. What we wanted to see was the women, right? White women have been in this industry for decades. And we were just waiting for them to like, hey sis, let me help you up. You know, let me put you in my space of privilege so that you can be seen as well. That didn't happen, but the girls that have published these, you know, with See Together and Surf Girl magazine, even my girls, I've been in Surf Girl magazine. Haji's been in Surf Girl magazine, and one of our girls, Awasek, was in, I think not this month, but the month before. We're all in Surf Girl magazine, so they're opening up their doors to diversify. But do I care if the men do? No, I don't. I never liked the writing in surf magazines in the first place, so I can't imagine them trying to write on a serious subject like what we're going through, right? Because they seem to trivialize it. I saw Surfline tried to dip into the diversity pool, and they caught the wrath of me when they started off by saying, I think the first paragraph was, I don't ever remember surfing being racist or sexist. That was the first line of a Surfline article about diversity. And I was like, okay, you guys need to stay out of it. Just go over there. Nobody asked you guys, like, you know, just keep misforecasting the waves. Just, that's your job. Just do that. Don't get into areas. I know everybody wanted to feel like they needed to dip into the diversity pool without any education, information. They were just wanting to be involved in it. And stuff started coming out, and it was so ignorant and so tone deaf. I was just cut off all media, right? Unless we're doing it, we're cutting it off. We don't want to see it. But what we saw was, we just seen that it was just, for us, it's just not worth the effort to try to educate you if you're just going to be here for 1 minute. Like, this is just going to sell a magazine, or you're just going to get like 1,000 likes on this. I'm probably not going to talk to you because you haven't done the research. You want us to do the work for you. There was a company that came to us for sponsorship, and they called us Colored. We realized that they were already going to be tone deaf, and I don't have that time to work with you to educate you on why you saying you're just a privileged white girl. You don't understand what the colored girls are doing. Now, there's some people that were picked up by him. I didn't tell them the story, but that was for them to research. Even as a black woman, I'm going to research every single thing I do because I know I'm going to be scrutinized. Oh, you sold out. Oh, you let them do this. Oh, you let them say that. If I would have had an article and they would have said, oh, this is what the colored girls are doing, and a caption underneath some bathing suit that we were representing, people would have lost their mind, especially the United States would have burnt the whole country down. Just over the word. Just over the word. Like, Rhonda, what are you doing? They said colored. As soon as they said colored, South Africa has a colored thing too. And I'm just like, you guys realize what colored in the United States is totally different than what you guys say. There was colored fountains, and then there were white fountains. If you were colored, you weren't allowed. So we didn't want to hear, I don't want to hear in 2021 that a brand who wants to sponsor me and my beliefs, and when you get me, not only do you get Black Girl Surf, you get the ASI, and you get Inkwell, and you get Solidarity and Surf, which put on the paddle outs. You have to be behind every single one of those entities in order for me to even be around you, and you have to understand what the mission is, right? The mission, yes, we're going to sell product, but the mission is diversity and real true diversity, where you're foundationally building for the next generations, which is why I went to Hurley. Went to Hurley because they were willing to start off and build a foundation that was going to last generations. And when Black Girl Surf is no longer the popular, they still have a program that they're running that looks just like Black Girl Surf, but it's whatever they decide to call it after we're out of the thing. But please start something now so that the future generations know that there's a way, a pathway. I just happen to be the entire pathway. Nobody gets the entire pathway. If you get a coach, your coach is a coach. Your coach may not know how to get you into sponsorship. Your coach may not know that your imagery is important. Your coach may, there's things that coaches know that, technically the marketing department doesn't know. They don't know that you have to have a certain look, or this type of wave, they need this type of spray in the background to make it, a viable cover shot. There's different things that you have to put into different, and if you don't know that, if you don't have that pathway, you're lost. And so I've been able to educate myself front to back. So you can come in the beginning surfer, and like Haju has a life right deal for a movie with a large studio for her life story. So, not even just Haju, as Haju and KK. So you tell me one coach and trainer that can get you from A to Z. They don't do it, but we do it here.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so great. Well done. I'm just so excited to see this influx of the next generation of girls of color, girls from all over the world out in the lineup, and feeling like they belong in the water and to surfing culture. So thank you so much for contributing to that.
Thank you.
Allowing so many women to feel like they belong too.
It's the belonging. When we walk through the village, 30 little girls with their hand out because they want you to give them a high five as you're going to your apartment, because they want to belong to something. And so, more importantly than training and everything else, the sense of belonging is important.
Special thanks to Patagonia for making this episode possible. They're a certified B Corporation and founding member of 1% for the planet. Patagonia is recognized internationally for its commitment to product quality and environmental activism. Thanks also to our sound engineer and musician, Shannon Soul Carroll. On behalf of myself, Lauren Hill, and my co-host, Dave Rastovich, thanks for listening with us. We'll be continuing today's conversation on Instagram, where we're at Water People Podcast.